Hello, everyone. And again, as I usually start the session, I would like to start with the same drill. So, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Again, depending on where you are based in. And you know the drill, everybody, that our session is more like fireside chat. We are going to discuss some topics. So, again, my name is Irfan Shakil, and I'm the VP of Training and Certification here at Upsword. And today's webinar again is not another slideshow or a slide deck. We are going to, deep diving into the concepts and the things that really matter in the IT and OT security, scenarios. All right. So before I start asking the questions, I would like to highlight a few things, especially regarding this webinar. So today's webinar is a very special webinar because at the end of the webinar, if you attend from beginning to end, you will be eligible to get the ISC2 CPE credits. That's will be an added advantage. And with that, I would like to introduce my guest here today. With us today, Kris has joined. Kris is currently working as the director of product here at Opsword, and he's dealing with diodes and net walls and all sort of OT side of product development and management. Well, Kris is has more than 2 decades of experience managing these cybersecurity products. I could say, I can even spend an entire webinar talking about Kris. However, let's hear from him. So, Kris, welcome, to the show. And how are you feeling, by the way?
Well, Irfan, thank you for inviting me as a guest here in your webinar. I'm feeling excellent, well protected by OpSWAT systems, obviously. So, yes, I'm based in Abu Dhabi. I'm excited to speak to you about these air gap technologies and how they are protecting the world's critical infrastructure.
That's great. That's good to know. So, Kris, before we dive into the air gap technologies and the
Mhm.
so that today's hot topic, air gap is dead or not. Before
Mhm.
I dive into that, how about you introduce yourself? I know I
Sure.
tried, but I believe that I didn't do the justice with all the experience and expertise you have. So, just stage is yours. Go ahead and start. Briefly mention about your expertise.
Okay, so yeah, basically, I'm an electrical engineer from education. Okay, then a good chunk of my life I spent in the telecommunications sector, building out optical backbone networks, trying to do some innovation projects as well back in the day. And then since 2019, I'm in the cyber defense arena, where yeah, it's really started to become interesting because in that cyber defense arena, there are use cases in both government side and in OT. So at the benefit of going into large scale OT protection projects, which obviously gave me a lot of first-hand experience in OT environments. Um, yeah, okay, what else do I do? So these days, I'm also very much aligned with the universities. Okay, so I follow the upcoming technologies like AI, like quantum computing, like
Mhm.
uh, crypto wallets, blockchain, all of that. So I tend to be in large circles, trying to discover more knowledge, and then yeah, also helping customers to
Mhm.
yeah, solve the current day problems. Okay, um,
That's great.
thank you.
Interesting. So, I mean, it's good that you have pretty diverse background and you are working into different direction.
Mhm.
It will be an exciting journey, to learn from you about your thoughts and what do you think about the air gap technology. And again, guys, everyone, it's your chance to say hello to Kris and to other colleagues over here. Use the chat option over there and drop from where you are joining just to get make sure that you feel comfortable and we all feel comfortable and let's start our show. So, Kris, the topic is very exciting. And, when I was
Mhm.
writing this, hey, are air gaps dead in 2026, is because whenever I travel, I meet several people in conferences, seminars, and
Mhm.
some of the experts. they believe, or at least they feel, that the air gap in that true sense is dead. Now, my question is, what does air gap mean today versus, let's say, 10 to 15 years ago?
Mhm. Okay. Yeah. So that's an interesting question, right? So I don't think it's a matter of dead or alive, right? This world is not white or black. The world is gray, right? So it depends a bit about how people look at it. So not every situation is equally sensitive. Okay, so it means we have to carefully look at okay the criticality of the different applications. Okay, if it's not critical, okay, fine, maybe some less secure things which are more affordable can be considered. Okay, if it's only
Mhm,
like a limited impact, okay, that doesn't make much sense to implement a data diode or a air gap technology there. But if it's very sensitive or very critical, right? So large impact, uh, power plants or financial systems, which really are critical for the nation state, right? So that makes a
mhm,
lot of sense to protect them in the best possible way. So people which are tasked with that protection question, okay, I think they always have to ask themselves at the end of the day, did I do everything in my power to really do the best possible protection to these critical systems? Okay.
mhm,
And then, if you want to answer that question, okay, ultimately it comes down to these air gap technologies again, right? So people they can rest assured there are systems in these air gap technologies which are completely protected, 100%
mhm,
secure. They're
mhm,
sometimes not the
mhm,
most easy things to do, but they are by far more secure than the less secure solutions which are out there. So
mhm,
it is really a matter of choice. You need to select the right solution for the right use case, right? The right look at the criticality first, and then
mhm.
implement the right use case.
So,
A lot
so
of these,
if I understood you correctly, you're saying that the air
uh,
gap technology itself is not there, is still there.
mhm,
However, it's, depending on the organization whether they use the right tools and techniques and
mhm,
protocols to implement it or not, right?
yes.
Okay,
So
so
the,
that's
uh,
correct.
there is one trend. Okay, so in the past, people they were able to make a big zone and then use one air gap technology to protect the perimeter. Okay, so the
Hmm.
trend is that the zones are getting smaller, right? So the
Hmm.
smaller the zones, the more secure your complete setup becomes. So
Hmm.
that's there. Um, it's still very much alive, right? So and it's getting better also because the
Okay.
combination is also strong. Okay,
Hmm. Hmm.
so in these scenarios, there are actually three big use cases, right? How to get data from a secure environment to the outside, which is a monitoring
Hmm.
only situation. Then there is
Hmm.
a use case how to get files, patch updates, and things that absolutely get into the secure environment in a
Hmm.
reliable way. So there you need to make sure that only the known good trusted files or data can go into that secure environment. And
Hmm.
then,
Hmm.
yeah, there are also some cases where you are connecting two sensitive sites together, like data centers.
Hmm.
Typically, that is a situation where payload between applications have to move in both directions. And
Hmm.
then, yeah, you're in the world of the cross-domain solutions. Uh, so the latest, okay, yeah, the cross-domain solution is basically a system which can communicate across the air gap in both
Hmm.
directions, but only the known good data can travel between the two sides. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, yes.
So let's hear from our participants. I'm gonna
Hmm.
bring a poll on the screen. Let's ask the people that how do they describe their own OT environment? Do they really feel that their OT environment, or I would say, let's rephrase the question, that is your critical environment or the environment that must be air gapped, are they truly air gapped or not? So let's see what they say about it. Meanwhile, it seems, Kris, I believe that there are several students have also joined this session. And
Hmm.
how about we take a step back and briefly define what the air gap truly means? What does it mean? Let's say if you have to explain a layman in a plain language, what is air gap in the
Hmm.
technology industry? That how do you define the air gap? What air gap basically is?
Yeah. Okay. So uh, there are two big. Okay, let's just focus on the OT, operational telecommunication, operation technology use case. Okay, so let's imagine you have like something sensitive like a nuclear power plant. Okay, so in the nuclear power plant, obviously people they need to use automation devices, right? PLCs, sensors, you name it. That's all in there. So yeah, these systems you can call them like critical digital assets. Why? Because they measure the real world, the physical world, and they also have the capability to impact the real world. Right? They can make changes in there, so they're really critical. So the reason of putting those systems into an air gap is you want to isolate them so that only the people who are authorized and locally
Mhm,
available can manipulate the physical environment, right? Because if
mhm,
an external entity from outside of your environment can manipulate that CDA, they can change the physical conditions there, and that is
mhm,
ultimately dangerous, right? So people can manipulate the physical environment to create accidents or what is it cause machinery to fail early or
mhm,
yeah put some extra chemicals in the water supply, things like that we want to avoid. And then how to do that is yeah, protect your critical system by not allowing
mhm,
any access to it. And then
mhm,
this air gap is basically meaning okay, this is an isolation of your plant system
mhm,
so that
mhm,
nobody from an external network can manipulate your systems.
mhm. And okay, so I mean, it's a good definition that the air gap supposed to be a system or a part of your network that cannot connect or communicate with external devices or systems. So that's interesting. And I see that the poll, we have some answers, and people
Mhm,
believe that they uh, you know 28% still believe that they have fully air gap system, and
mhm,
few believe that it's segmented but it's still connected. That is
mhm,
alarming. uh, Now, Chris, as you defined the air gap environment, that
okay.
is that's supposed to be isolated, and that should be isolated, I would say. It's still we get news, we have seen in the history that these critical infrastructure, they got hacked. So
Mhm,
why do so many incidents still occur in supposedly or theoretically isolated systems? How still these the black guy head guys, the hackers, they penetrate into that environment if it's not connected?
hmm, okay. So yeah, that's an interesting question. So how does that happen? So I think the attackers they look at the route of the least resistance also, right? Where can I get the most damage for the efforts that we're putting in? Okay. So historically speaking, yeah, okay, firewalls they were very much in practice, right? So uh, there have been situations in the past where I'm not gonna go too much in detail, but there are like global installations of certain equipment, okay, which had a monitoring tool which would send monitoring data through a firewall through the internet to a global monitoring center, okay, which means now you're connecting a few hundred sites. All of that data aggregates into the central site. It's wonderful for predictive maintenance and all of these things, right? The good is always there. But if you look at it from an attacker point of view, yeah, this central monitoring system is like the big honeypot, right? If you break in there, and if it's only firewalls protecting all of those remote sites, yeah, you can potentially get into hundreds of these OT sites and start disrupting them on a global scale. Okay, so
Mhm,
one of
mhm,
these attacks happened like that, um, and then yeah, the whole question was then how can we improve this? Okay, ultimately came down to, okay, look at these sites. It's actually only a monitoring information that comes out of the environment, which means we
Hmm.
don't need bidirectional communication. We can convert this into a one-way communication, right?
One way.
So
Okay.
if um, monitoring data only flows out of the critical environment into the monitoring center through a one-way connection, which is physics, okay, whatever happens to the
Hmm.
central site, there is no impact on the remote sites. If one of the remote sites gets impacted, yeah, there is no way that they can break back into the central site and start causing damage in the neighboring sites. So it doesn't
Hmm.
exist if you do this kind of monitoring only applications.
Okay. So you're saying that the best way to ensure that even in
Mhm.
by any chance, the data should not be coming out from that isolated environment is to really cut off the channel. There should not be a bi-directional channel, only one way in, no way out. Is that what you're saying?
If it's monitoring only, yes, the best possible protection to have a monitoring application is only send the
Mhm.
monitoring information out one way. That is 100% secure. Nothing can break in because it's protected by physics, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, I always make the comparison between people, right? So what we are doing here is bi-directional communication, right? We have a
Okay.
medium, we can speak, you can listen, we can see each other even, okay? So
Yeah.
this is very much synchronization between the two of
So
us.
you don't want to hear from me, it seems.
No, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. So, but let's say we are in a monitoring only application. What would that mean? Well, I would be the person in the secure environment, but I don't
Mhm.
have eyes, I don't have ears, I only have a mouth, so I can talk. Okay, and
Okay.
then yeah, my speech goes to you, but then you
Mhm.
are in the receiving end. So what do you have? You have ears, no eyes, and no mouth. So I can talk,
Mhm.
you can
Mhm.
listen, but if an attacker gets you, they
So,
cannot
so
change you.
in those typical environment,
Mhm.
eventually, in one way or another, uh, again, layman question. So in one way or
Please.
another, you need some sort of access, remote access, I would say, to remotely
Ah,
conduct the maintenance,
yes.
and troubleshooting and things like that. So how would you do that?
That's a very good question. So, okay, um, there is again yeah, a question of how large your organization is, right? If it's one site and they have support people on site, okay, then there is no need for any secure remote access. But if your environment has tens of thousands of sites, it's impossible to have people on all of those sites, right? So then remote management becomes important. So, okay, so here it becomes very interesting because then you should have a secure remote access solution,
Hmm.
which allows you to, in a controlled way, yeah, basically perform maintenance in those tens of thousands of sites, right? So it's always like, okay, and then the criticality of that should not be of a nature. If one of those secure remote access things gets compromised, that it can cause damage on a nation scale, right? So it's if it's controllable and the risk is manageable, yeah, a lot of people do that with secure remote access.
Hmm.
What the intelligence community is recommending, that is like, okay, so they say, okay, the connection between your remote site and your central site should be a custom encrypted TCP connection. Okay,
Hmm.
which means it's not a standard remote desktop protocol or something like that. It should be on a specific protocol, and you should be able to filter that protocol, right? So it goes into the direction of this cross-domain solution again, so you
Hmm.
can have control of what they're doing in your remote site.
Interesting.
It's a
Interesting.
very
Hey,
interesting
in,
question, and a lot of customers are struggling with that exact
yeah.
problem.
And you know what? Somebody in the chat says that
Hmm?
workers have to physically go to the customer place without a phone, without MB, only with their own knowledge.
Yes, in some cases it's like that. So,
Yeah.
uh, okay, so that's yeah, it depends on the criticality of the sites. So if you have been to places like that where you literally get okay, it's not easy, right? So they will
Mhm.
check. That's a difference between the police and the military, right? So if one of those OT sites is protected by police, okay, fine. They
Mm-hmm.
will
Mm-hmm.
just make sure you're okay. But if it's a
Mm-hmm.
site protected by the military, okay, it typically indicates that it's a nation state security site. And then obviously you need to have, they will go through all of the details, they will screen you, they will do everything possible to make sure that you're a known good person,
Mm-hmm.
that you don't have malicious devices on you, and that
Mm-hmm.
you are knowledgeable, right? Okay, so you should be able to do your job independently.
Mm-hmm.
Um, okay, right. So in
So,
that kind of an
Chris,
environment, there is no
one,
internet. That's also
I'm
interesting. Eh?
sorry to interrupt. Yeah, I'm sorry to
Please,
interrupt you. So Ma- Madhawa in the chat says that can you please speak loud? I'm not really sure is
hmm
this message directs to you or myself, but let's try to speak loud. Maybe there's some some people are able to hear. And let's also bring a question. I can see a question. Luis.
please.
All right. The question is says why. Oh, so yeah, this is interesting question. So why classic air gap fail in real world ICS deployment from your experience? What are the most common reasons air gap OT environment break down in practice? Wow, so many things in one question. I mean, so Chris, your take.
Why do classic air gaps fail in real world ICS deployments? Okay, so you really want to enforce your air gap, the problem becomes updating devices inside your air gap environment, right? So it's like, okay, once you are there, maybe you're running an old version of software. Do you really need to update that? Okay, at some point, maybe you want to have a new feature in your operational environment. How do you get that update in there? And then again, it becomes important to make sure that the files which are going inside that environment are clean, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
part of it. I also had the situation where people they were in the firewall scenario, okay, and then the customer and the other vendors they would say, "Yeah, look, this thing is completely one way. There is absolutely nothing coming back. We can replace this firewall with the data diodes." Okay, then we do that, and then suddenly a certain applications stop working, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
you have to start doing the root cause investigation, and turns out that some applications actually are using some back channels to keep working. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yes.
Okay, so that's
Mm,
great. That's good to know. Okay, Chris, going back to our topic and
okay.
you have mentioned the the approach, the better approach, I would say, is to to limit the communication through physical channel. Let's
Mm,
not have the bidirectional communication. Let's say if you have a critical environment, critical infrastructure, or a network that really worth protecting, you want
mm,
to ensure that the only the no information should be coming out, and you can enforce it through physical medium, as you said.
mm.
Now,
So
which
okay,
brings the topic of diode, and so.
for the most critical environment, that is the best advice I can give you. Okay, if you can make
Mhm,
everything monitoring only, that is the best security profile. It's like everything is closed. Now, in real world scenarios, it's not always like that. You cannot always convert everything in monitoring only applications, right? So from 100% to 100% secure, one monitoring only, there are a few steps which can go into the other direction to allow different communication streams to go in and potentially go bidirectional. And then it becomes really interesting how to protect those.
mhm,
Okay.
mhm,
So maybe it's like, okay, so the example is if we have a monitoring application, no problem, we can send it out. That doesn't create an attack surface.
mhm,
Then
mhm,
if we need to get something into the secure environment, yeah, there it's of paramount importance that we are 100% sure that whatever we send into the environment is clean, that we are not going to cause a problem by having this new part of data into the operational environment, right? So it's a one
mhm,
way in with scanning direction. Okay. Then the third and most critical thing is, okay, if it's really needed to have bidirectional communication, how are we going to protect that? And here, that's a bit the interesting combination, right? So
mhm,
if you have one data diode, one direction, we can have two as well, right? So which allows us to create a back-to-back uh, transmission of payloads in both directions across the air gap. Okay, so here we have two options. Either we're going to filter the data to that's like passing and creating latency, potential latency problems by filtering that. So maybe that's not the only option. The other
Mm.
option is to monitor that data, right? So if we deploy like a network tap on the network traffic, then feed that information into a network detection and response system where we are using the threat intelligence, right? So to look at the data flows, and then we're going to classify each data flow with a security risk score, which is
Mhm.
this one being super secure, 10 being super untrusted. Okay, and
So,
then
so
that okay.
it seems, the problem, or maybe in real life, the trade-off is between the security and operational benefits. The
Yes.
more secure it is, the less it seems. I mean, again, as per what I'm getting is, maybe it's gonna be very, very difficult to maintain. Not very
Mhm,
difficult to maintain. It's more like challenging as far as the operational is concerned. You have to do more to do that. And another,
mhm,
related part is, when you were saying this one way, I went back to
ah,
my college days, when we used to learn the data communication, let's say on old school,
mhm,
cables and electrical signals and things like that.
mhm.
So there are few things. A is the error checksum and things like that. When
Yes.
you send the data, you have to make sure that the channel is reliable.
Yes.
And let's say if there if it's not bi-directional, no information is coming out, how will you ensure that the channel is fully reliable and whatever you are
Ah,
sending is really what is getting in there?
yes. Now we're arriving at an interesting learning point because it's a very specific technology, obviously, right? Let's just explain that in okay. So your cable in school, it was a bidirectional cable. Okay. So let's just remove half the cable. Let's say we have a one-way communication path between the two sides. Okay. Then
Mhm.
how do we transmit the data reliably from the side A to side B through that one directional cable? Okay. Now, if we would just send data, okay, that cable can have packet loss and can lose data in transmission. So you cannot know without doing additional things that the data will be received correctly. Okay. So how to overcome this? Well, the first check is we have to know if it's received wrong. So we calculate a cyclic redundancy check, right? You have data which has to be sent from site A. That data we first do cyclic redundancy checksum on that data. So we have a value. Then we send the data and that's source side CRC, right? Cyclic redundancy check to the destination. The destination site recalculates a new CRC based on the received payload, and then we compare, right? So if both CRCs are correct or identical, then it means that payload is received correctly on the destination side. That's one element. Now, second thing is, okay, how to recover from that if you have two one-way cables, one-way cable, obviously. If for some reason you received a wrong payload, uh, obviously you can send the same payload a second time. Okay, if one
Mhm.
part fails, you can use the redundant connection. Still, that's not a complete story there. Now imagine this is going on. Okay, so everything is
Mhm.
being received correctly, but your destination server for some reason has a maintenance window. You need to install a
Mhm.
patch. You have to reboot it. Maybe it has been down for 4 hours. Okay, so
Mhm.
now since it's a one-way communication system, there is no way to request data back from the source, right? So you cannot get there. So the most advanced systems, what they do is they send the actual data and
Mhm.
a piece of historical information for, let's say, maybe the last 8 hours or so, right? So the
Mhm.
moment your destination server gets online again, it will immediately start seeing the actual data. So you can see what's going on into your OT plant. And the moment the historical data is being received by the destination, it will
Mhm.
backfill the data so that there is also no data gap or historical data is being restored
Wow,
automatically without going into the operational environment. So it's all automatic.
that's great.
Okay,
That's
maybe
good
one
to
more
know. It's
thing.
I mean.
So, so there is one more thing that we could potentially do to overcome that,
Mm,
and that's something from the telecommunications world. Okay,
mhm,
so there is a protocol called forward error correction,
mhm,
which means basically, in addition to having the CRC check, you could also calculate the FEC, the forward error correction code, which you send with the payload. That FEC data allows the destination to do a fault correction. So if some fault is received with the forward error correction method, you can also correct your fault in the destination system as well.
mhm. Okay, okay, that's great. Oh, that's really eye-opening, and it opens the door to another world, I would say.
Please.
Okay, so we are seeing, several questions in here,
Hmm.
and I will try to bring some of the questions up on the screen. Okay, let's bring some questions. Um, all right, I can see. So, all right, so here's another a question on the screen. And okay, Michael has asked this: what is the impact of the increase or remote technologies combined with the need to save money? Okay, and companies decide it is cheaper to ignore traditional air gap in order to be able to have remote workers.
Hmm.
All right, I want you to take on this. Let's see.
Okay. So, what is the impact of the increase of remote technologies combined with the need to save money? Okay, what is the impact of the increase? Okay. Um, okay, so obviously that's interesting. For instance, companies decide that it's cheaper to ignore traditional air gaps in order to be able to have remote workers. I suppose that uh, horses already left. Okay. Yeah, so that's again the question how critical it is, right? So if you have one employee who doesn't have any direct links with your banking system or something like that, okay, what is the cost of being compromised? If that's acceptable, okay, that's fine. If it's not acceptable, okay, a lot of companies they have these rules. Okay, you have to come to the site to perform your work. That is because of the safety issues with remote connectivity, right?
Mhm,
These days, the attack vectors are also attackers' capabilities are also evolving, like these AI, deep fakes, and all of these things, which leads to uh, questions, right? Are these real? Are the remote connections trustworthy? So it's a fine balance. So we should always consider if it's worth it. Is it worth it taking the risk of having the remote connection? Yes or no? If it's
mhm,
acceptable,
mhm,
okay, fine. If it's too much critical and human lives are in danger, okay, probably not a good idea to do that then.
mhm. Okay, so before that, you were mentioning
Mhm.
CRC and error checks and how to have a reliable communication in one way. So I see a very interesting question from David is coming
Mhm.
on the screen. It says that if we are on data diodes, how
Mhm.
do we pass the command back to the source to resend the data if CRC is not the same as source and destination?
Hmm.
That is highly relevant to what you were explaining. So that is why I thought to bring it now. It's the best timing.
Okay, so if we are on data diodes, how do we pass the command back to the source to resend the data if CRC is not the same at the source? Okay, fine. So this is like yeah, part of the solution is this retransmission of historical backfilling, right? So if you have simultaneous transmission through a data diode of actual data and historical information, then for the duration of the historical backfill window, there is no need to go back to the site. It's just a matter of waiting a bit until that same information is retransmitted again. Okay. If the data is far in the past and there is no, it's a purely air-gapped environment with monitoring only applications, yeah, there is no automatic way to get data retransmitted from the source environment. Okay, which means yeah, some person in that environment will need to initiate a certain procedure to send you that data again. Mhm.
Okay, so guys, it seems really exciting in here because I see a lot of people are participating, which is great, and that's the beauty of these webinars, I would say. So as we were discussing the unidirectional or bidirectional communication, their limitation, I do have a poll. I want to ask you guys to participate and share your thoughts about what do you in your environment, how does it work. So in your environment, your typical environment, how data primarily leaves your critical infrastructure, either is it through USB one way gateway, which is again the diode, or remote access, or you're not sure. So the poll is here on your screen. Everybody, please participate and let us know your thought and how it's currently working in your environment, because we're going to discuss that how these several techniques listing in here can introduce security vulnerabilities or loops which that usually attackers they exploit. So meanwhile we are collecting all the answers. Kris, let's discuss few more things.
Please.
Let's talk about and I forgot the name. I read it in the chat. Somebody has asked that how or what sort of product, what product one should be using to fully isolate or to fully achieve that one way data transfer, and
Hmm?
how let's say the product you manage can help us to do that.
Okay. So, okay, so the truly one-way communication, that's what they call the data diode, right? So this is a device which doesn't have any back channel. Typically, they are common criteria EL4 plus certified. It comes down to having a physical optical connection from the secure environment to the less secure environment, which is transmit to receive only. Not a single bit of data can flow back. In terms of the OPSWAT air gap technologies ecosystem, so we
Mhm,
have a full set of these capabilities, including an optical data diode, which is this reliable one-way communication system. It's also available in high availability, active
mhm,
standby, and it can also be used in a back-to-back configuration. So it's actually catering for the three use
mhm,
cases: one way in, one way out, and bidirectional, in combination with the NDR if needed. Um, Beyond that, we also have security gateways, which are interesting in case of legacy applications and situations where you need to synchronize data centers, right?
mhm. Great. So everyone, if as Kris mentioned, there are few technologies and products that can help you to achieve that level of security. If you want to
Mm.
learn more about it, and if you want to stay connected with Kris, make sure to drop your note, your request in the chat window over here, and we will make sure that Kris will get access to your contact details to reach out and discuss further. Anyway, so let's end the poll in here. Let's see what are we getting. All right, interesting. Although still results are populating in here. See, a lot of people are saying, most of the people are saying the 32%, 32.7. So their OT environment, USB or removable media is what through the data is going out, and secure file transfer is also an important medium. And again, one way gateway diode. I mean, I was hoping that it should be zero, because it has to be, the diode should be helping to get the data in instead of getting the data out. So with these answers, Kris, what are the security implications do you feel that you do you think? So for example, the USB or the removable media. I mean, I can
Mm.
think of a Stuxnet. I can think of
Yeah.
so many other attacks, and it seems that people are still doing it. So how what are you going to recommend in this scenario?
Okay. So okay, there need to be a more secure way of these removable media, right? So it has to be an encrypted medium, which is only applicable within your organization. When you come with a third-party removable media, it should be scanned and ideally moved into your own secure media. Okay, which is yeah, scanning of the files again. So make sure that the data that goes in is known good, that you don't get any problematic data into your environment. It's a combination, right? So it's a lot of these things are normal in IT, like VPNs. Okay, that's fine if it's secure enough. For OT, it has to be evaluated on a case by case basis.
Hmm. Okay,
Mhm.
interesting. All right, let's bring more questions. And I see a question, Alex. Do you have recommendation for what vendors for industrial taps and data diodes and industrial switches? That's interesting.
Do you have recommendations for what vendors for industrial taps and data diodes and industrial
I would say
switches?
Oxford. Why not?
Okay, but okay, sure. That's a good answer, Irfan. Um, what I would recommend is about the secure supply chain, right? It's like, okay, any of these devices are critical. Last thing you want to do is have a device in there which is not a real device and maybe some malicious content is part of your hardware. So the secure supply chain is what I would look at. Okay, how are these devices manufactured? Is there anything? Is everything checked? Is everything validated? And am I sourcing it from the right partner? There is nothing funny in
Yeah,
those
that is important.
devices.
Sourcing is really important because sometimes
Mm.
the device itself is or the product itself introduces the
So
security challenges.
one of those stories is like people they were buying switches from a very known international brand, and it turned out to be a fake switch with backdoor hardware in it. So okay, that's something you don't want to do.
Great, great. All right, let's bring another question. So I saw one from Nirav. Um, how to monitor the failure in air-gapped environment? That's interesting.
How to monitor? Okay, um, yeah. So it's like how to define failures, right? So it's like if it's unpatched system or it's really uh, a physical failing of a process or something like that. Yeah, okay, depends a bit how you define that. Um, so it's always good to have a red teaming exercise, maybe, right? So go in there, try to find loopholes, right? So people they tend to make their own life easy, right? So if you're
Mhm,
working in a air gap environment, maybe it's very impractical to go through all of these security checks, and you need to get there, and it's like a lot of walking. Maybe people they implement their own bypass. Okay, so you should have a system to detect that and try to find bypasses in your air gapped environment and plug those holes at the
mhm.
soonest. Um, yeah, this network tapping might be interesting in that again, because
Okay.
if you tap all the traffic, now you can analyze the traffic, seeing where the extra information comes in. You can solve
Mhm,
that in that environment and protect it in a better way again.
mhm. Interesting. Okay, so speaking of all the things, let's talk about some compliance related, or maybe
Mhm,
regulations related. How
mhm.
regulations around the world influence isolation decisions.
Okay. I have some practical examples of that. Typically, it's like it starts with an incident of some sort, right?
Mhm.
So it's like okay, something
It always
happened.
starts with the incident.
Yes, apparently that's like nothing moves without pressure. Okay,
Yeah.
uh, and then suddenly the how to get an incident solved at scale, right? And then the regulators come in, right? So it means if we put a rule in place, now suddenly all of the companies which have this environments they have to follow the regulator, right? So it's a strong tool to get a stronger security profile in place for applications which probably are vulnerable. So one of these most recent ones is the cryptocurrency scenario. So there is like a
Mhm,
new mandate in a few countries, which is mandating the use of air gap technologies to protect the cold crypto wallet when interacting with the hot crypto wallet.
mhm.
So that's a good example how these uh, yeah, things get implemented. So the other subject that I want to touch on here is like, okay, these obviously if you walk into an existing situation, not all the applications are compatible with these one-way communication systems.
Okay.
Okay, so another Another example there is Splunk. Okay, so SIM data. Nothing moves without pressure again, right? So it always starts with simple integration, right? It's the most simple integration to get one-way communication is a backup restore feature, right? You backup a system, you move the backup file across the air gap, you restore the system in the destination. It works, but
Mhm.
it's not very practical. So the better scenario there is okay. Let's make some use of a real-time communication protocol, like syslog as an example. Okay, we move that across the air gap. It's working, but it's too much administrative work. Okay, now,
Mhm.
the best possible thing is to have a technology integration with those vendors of those applications. And we've seen that over time, when bigger customers are adopting those solutions with data diodes, those software providers are actually making their platforms compatible with one-way payload flows. And then it becomes supported natively in those platforms. And then, yeah, people also avoid too much administrative work.
Mhm.
Um,
So, um, I have hosted several sessions with several folks from
mhm,
various companies, even from Oxford as well, and we were told before about the technologies such as content disarm,
mhm,
etc. So, how secure file transfer, content disarm, and inspection and techniques or
mhm.
technologies like that, like these, basically complement the diodes.
Ah, that's nice. So, okay. Um, the data diodes, as such, they protect the parameter. Okay, so it's just about the enforcement of data flows. Now, if you want to start ensuring that depends on the direction of the data flows, obviously, but there are nice combinations. Okay, so if you want to make sure that the files which are going into your secure environment are secure, you can start filtering them. Okay, don't trust anything that you can download from the internet. Start yeah, basically by filtering, right? So you can do multiple scanning against antivirus, anti-malware scannings. You can run it through a content disarm and reconstruct system to really disarm and remove the bad content from those files. Could even push it through a sandbox. Okay, until you're as sure as you can be that those files are not malicious. Then, once the check is fine and we have the manifest, only then we can move the file through the diodes into the secure environment. Okay, so
Mhm.
this is the one-way in use case. The same scenario if you have like you want to release a file from the secure environment. The scenario
Mhm.
becomes different. So you don't want to release any information about your network. So these files they should not contain any IP addresses, right? So means you can do the data leak prevention system, DLP, right? Redact those files, remove the sensitive information. Once you
Okay.
have the redacted files, you can move them outside of your environment with confidence and release that to external parties for consumption.
So it sounds like a defense in depth, like, and you have multiple layers of protection. One way is of course data diode. The others that you can, and other technologies
Mhm,
complement data diodes such as the as you said CDR and DLP, etc. So and again, in my opinion, one technology, especially nowadays, we are not in 1990s now. Nowadays, one technology, one solution is not enough, or maybe will not give you the 100% protection. It's always better to have multiple layers of
mhm,
protection or defense. Having said that, I can see a very interesting questions in this chat is from Muhammad. The question is that how to balance operational
mhm,
response speed with cybersecurity requirements in critical environments such as oil and gas.
mhm. Okay, that's a million dollar question, right? If your response is too slow, you might lose millions of dollars because your production is not running. Um, at the same time, if you're opening it up to a very fast response, then it might introduce vulnerabilities which cause yeah, larger problems for a longer duration. So this is a fine balance. You should have like a good response system in place, right? Um, okay, one of these things that might be interesting is like the national threat level. Okay, if the threat level is low, you can operate in a certain mode. Okay, maybe secure remote access might be allowed in certain scenarios. Okay, with strict control. Now, if the national security level is higher, you can switch off the outgoing direction and only allow the monitoring direction only, which means now you have to have more staff, right? So if you want to have the response time, it means you have to have the people at site which can do the actions when needed to safeguard your operations. Okay.
Yeah, it's always operation versus, and of course the cost. And as you said that people often, or companies or enterprises often realizes once they get they are breached, I would say. All
Mm-hmm.
right, having let's bring another question, and we do have a very interesting question. It says that with increasing IT/OT convergence, I really love this topic, IT/OT convergence.
Okay.
So, and let's hear from you that the question says that what skills or roles will be most critical for securing non-air gapped industrial network. Now we are going transitioning into the non-air gapped
Okay.
network of IT and OT. Yeah.
So, which increased IT/OT convergence, what skills and roles will be most critical for securing non-air-gapped industrial networks? Okay, so this is like, well, let's say you have 10,000 less critical sites, right? Um, so, okay, obviously it's the it starts with education. So people they either study some electrical topics or they study business, right? So which is IT related. So you should always understand the processes that you're dealing with. So if somebody works on the OT environment, they should at least know the physical consequences of the parameters that they're setting. Okay, so it's always going to be an engineering subject there. Now, nevertheless, these things are coming together, right? So more and more of these IT platforms are used in OT environments. So it can be very cost effective to use IT platforms like, let's say, MongoDB as an example. Okay, you can use
Mhm.
MongoDB with some OT connectors to create a historical database, to create a SCADA system, to create a HMI of it, and then yeah, can start using the normal IT things. Um,
Yeah.
so is this
And
coming
speaking of
together?
that, I
Yes,
mean, yeah, I don't want to self
Mhm.
promote. However, I would love to mention few things.
Please.
If you go to upsolacademy.com YouTube, we have already started a series of videos explaining, tutorial based videos where we explain different things, technologies and script, especially the open source products that you can use to learn or polish your skills. So you should go and check this out.
Mhm.
You will get to know a lot more things about the skills that you need to protect the non-air gapped environment. Now, Kris, I know time, is goes faster. It's happening, right now. It's already 52 minutes past, and I don't want to spend most time with fuller words. Let's talk about few things. And again,
Please.
at the beginning, as I said earlier, I always, get this from people that the air gap network is no more. So let's explore.
It's very much
Let's.
alive, Irfan.
It is.
Very
It
much
is.
alive, and it's so okay. Maybe so. In the past, data diodes they tend to be quite expensive. Okay, now
Mhm.
that is also something which is being tackled, right? So there are currently optical data diodes which come at the price of industrial firewall. And that's interesting because now
That's
it's like,
interesting.
okay, you have $1,000 to spend, right? You can either
Mhm.
spend it on industrial firewall, which is known to be they have vulnerabilities and all of that in it, or you can spend the same $1,000 to buy a fully protected diode.
Yeah. Why not to buy a diode? I would say.
If the use case allows, the security profile of the diode at the price of industrial firewall is much better because you get
Hmm.
more security for the same dollar value.
Yeah. That's great. Okay. So, in your opinion, if I ask you openly, one misconception about air gap you wish would disappear.
Uh, that it's one way monitoring application only. Okay. So air gap technologies can be for monitoring applications, for one-way in applications, and bi-directional traffic. Okay. It just comes down to selecting the right use case, and it can fit in all environments if you really look at it from a holistic point of view.
Mhm. And one mistakes organizations should stop repeating immediately regarding how they deal with the air gap network.
Um, One mistake. Okay, so it's like over reliance on firewalls, right? So it's like don't trust your firewall completely. Try to yeah, plug the holes with the right technology.
So you
Firewall
said
with
do
a
not trust
diode
your
with a
firewall.
firewall.
Do not trust your firewall completely. Why?
Uh, Firewalls, they have rules in them. Rules can be misconfigured. They also have vulnerabilities which can be exploited. Okay, so now you have like a way into your environment. So it's like audits, right? So people they come in, they take an audit from your environment, they get recommendations. Okay, fine. Now we have to convert your firewall into a one-way firewall. Yes, there are rules to do that, but it's a software rule. Ultimately, if the session is established in one direction, payload can still flow in the other direction. Better
Mhm.
thing to do, let's take two firewalls of different vendors, put them in series. Yes, it's better again, but it doesn't completely secure your perimeter. That story only ends when you put a real data diode in the middle, right? So I'm not telling you throw away your firewalls, keep them because they do a lot of
Mhm.
good filtering and rules based security, no problem. But you can amend them with a data diode so that they
Mhm.
are completely one way in a physical way. So that removes the back channel. It secures your environment completely in the best possible way. If I was
Mhm.
a CISO of an OT company, I would sleep well at night if I implement something like that because I know that is the very, very best security profile out there.
Mhm. You know, in the chat, I'm seeing so many interesting conversation happening in parallel.
Mm.
But I really like James. I think he responded to my question about the mistake organization should stop immediately. He said that first mistake is not fully understanding your assets, especially within OT. Is especially within OT environment, which brings me a question about the visibility. And if you do not, and again, we say that if you do not know your assets, you won't be able to ever protect it. So how do we do the asset in? I'm taking this question out from this comment that how do we do the asset management in the air gap environment?
You can have a sensor there. So it's like an asset management platform collects data from your network traffic, right? It's either passive scanning, right? It looks at traffic, tries to understand the devices in your OT environment, monitors them, or it's active scanning, right? They go out, knock doors, say, look, what kind of device are you? Give me more information. That's active scanning. So you could have a sensor in your air gap environment which does that, and then we send that
Mm-hmm.
information out to the central monitoring platform, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this way you can get that out of 100 or so air gap environments and consolidate that into a single um, monitoring platform again. So that's
Mm-hmm.
possible, just a little bit of architecting.
Okay, cool. So I'm still seeing many questions in the chat. Um, However, as we are running out of time, what we'll do, guys, after this session, we'll try to reach out and respond to the question. You'll be getting the email notification as we write to these questions. And before we go, and I would like to highlight a few things, especially um, you know after the feedback, after the webinar, please make sure to give us the feedback. There will be a short survey, and your participation really mean it help us to improve our webinar, and also help us to understand what sort of topics you would like to learn, so that we can invite guests accordingly. So please attend the short feedback survey. And and again, before I let you go back to your life, and before your work, or maybe just to get your coffee, I will leave with you that cybersecurity is not just about tools or platforms or policies. It's about people. And if we don't train them right, nothing else matters. So whether you're a partner, customer, or someone just curious about this crazy world of critical infrastructure protection, thanks for showing up today. And especially, I would like to thank you, Kris, for your time and all the information, the valuable details you have shared with us and with our participants. Any last minute thoughts, anything that you would like to highlight?
Thank you so much for organizing it, Irfan. It's really appreciated. and I'm always ready to start solving the next problems, like cryptocurrency protection and AI protection and quantum computing protection. So whenever some new things are there, contact me. I'm happy to interact with you. Thank you.
Perfect. So maybe the next webinar we will have a separate topic. And again, everyone, please attend the short feedback survey. And if you learned even one thing today that makes you feel differently, that's a win for me and even for Kris as well. Until next time, stay curious, stay prepared, and yes, stay alive. Take care.